Hey everybody, welcome back to the 60th episode of this podcast, which has forever been named Taps and Patience. I am AJ, formerly of Design the Everything, now with Audacity Micro, and here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. Hi Harrison.
How we doing?
Has your company ever changed names, or has it always been Precision Ingenuity?
It has always been Precision Ingenuity. In fact, we got the name, I think, 2 years before we left our jobs and formally started it. So we this is something I don't think I've talked about on the podcast, but at our old job, probably 2 years before we actually quit, is when we started building everything. And we had actually, or it might have even been longer than that. I might have actually gotten Precision Ingenuity logos and artwork done. Gosh, it might have been 4 or 5 years before we actually struck out on our own. I know it was 2 years before we quit our jobs when we formally did all the paperwork and filed an LLC. Because we did that, and then like a year later or 6 months later, we bought the Tormach together, and then it was a year after that when we quit our jobs.
Okay.
So, yeah. Because this is year 2 of us being on our own, and it was, it was 2021 is when I quit. We quit our jobs, and 2020 is when we got our machine.
Okay.
So our machine is 3 years old, 4 years old, 3 years old.
I guess I had the Design the Everything name and logo for a long time too. So
it's Precision Ingenuity. We didn't do ourselves any favor with that name. When we did it, what our criteria was when we came up with our name was I didn't want a name that was tied to anything in particular other than kind of machining related. Because I wasn't sure if we were going to go machining or if we were going to do engineering, because we're both mechanical engineers. And then the other thing was I didn't want it to have our name associated with it in any way, shape, or form. Because if we ever did decide to sell the business, I didn't want to have, Harrison's Machine Works, and then, Harrison's been bought out. So, or, sold his company and they've kept the name or something.
It's like my last job. The company was Sam Moran Equipment. And you would tell someone that, and they'd be like, well, are you Sam Moran? It's like, no, I'm not Sam Moran.
Yeah.
It was like the owner at the time, it was his like father-in-law or something like that was Mr. Sam Moran.
Gotcha.
But company still had the name.
Yep. So anyways, that's kind of a brief history on the founding of the name and the company. We went through a lot of different names before we initially landed on Precision Ingenuity. And we actually got our logo through, it wasn't Upwork, but it was a service like them.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up paying someone to kind of come up with our logo. So
I need a new logo now. I'm keeping my colors and probably my general brand style, but I'm going to need a new logo.
Yeah, that's always fun. So
it interestingly, I decided to go a little bit I decided to specify the niche in the business name, Audacity Micro, because I want to do more of the micro machining stuff. And I seriously considered like Audacity Manufacturing or Audacious Manufacturing, but it was just it's too long. It makes the domain name long. It makes the email addresses long. And one of the big problems I had with Design the Everything is like if you were trying to tell someone what my email address was over the phone was miserable. They never understood what it was. And I basically had to spell the whole thing. And
gotcha.
I would miss emails, or not I miss. Other people would send emails to the wrong address all the time from just typoing it, just because it's a lot of letters to type correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And my name is still a little bit long, but they're easy, common words.
Gotcha. The my old company had a really long name, but their abbreviation actually was really nice. And so they initially had their email address as the long name, and then they changed it to the abbreviated name, and it was so much better.
Yeah. I I haven't done anything like official yet. Like it's basically just official on Instagram. There's no, DBA yet or anything for Audacity Micro.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably legally going to be like Audacity Micro Manufacturing or Audacity Micro Machining. And then just everywhere, I'll just call it Audacity Micro.
Gotcha. Sounds good. So, how's it now that you've kind of transitioned out of the product space into the job shop space?
It has been very nice to just focus on job shop work, like especially with Xometry, and not like I don't need to make sales calls or anything. I will eventually start doing that and try to get a off Xometry customer base built up. But in the meantime, it's like just however much I work, that's how much money I make. If I need money, put in more hours. If I don't need as much money, don't put in the hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able to focus a lot better and get a lot more done because the path from start to finish is so much more linear than it was with Design the Everything. With Design the Everything, I was doing like 8 different things in parallel at all times. And that basically meant that I focused on nothing and got very little done. So there was a while there where I was struggling with money because, I didn't have the Design the Everything income anymore and I didn't have the Xometry money flowing. But now that we're starting to get the Xometry money to flow, it's been a big relief.
If there was any takeaway going, because I think a lot of people, including myself, want to go to the product side. You've kind of started in the product side and switched over to the job shop side, which is kind of the inverse of what most people do. Most people start off in the job shop world and then move to the product world. Do you have any insights that, looking back, you could have done that would have made you stay in the product side, or knowing what you know, at least at this point in time, if you could go back, would you have switched over to the job shop sooner?
Yes, going back, I would have switched to the job shop sooner. I'm not sure that I did much wrong with Design the. I'm sure I did lots of things wrong. But my overall general approach, I don't think was that bad. I think it was more like my brain and how it interacts with tasks. And like, in order for me to get work done, my brain needs the more linear tasks. And I have a hard enough time focusing as it is. And when I have a environment that is forcing me to focus on a million different things, I just get nothing done. So gotcha. I don't think the overall structure of how I did things was too far off. I think it just it's not the right business for me, like AJ as an individual.
Gotcha. Okay. Would you have any advice for anyone who wants to go to the product space?
I am much more hesitant on encouraging Kickstarters now, and much more pro ads, meta ads.
Okay.
I think ideally the best thing you can do is be really good at social media. Austere Manufacturing, for example, does a really good job on social media, and I bet they sell a lot of things that way. But the Kickstarters, they're just, I don't know, they're stressful. They hang over you. And you spend a lot, you get the money up front, but then you spend a lot of time not making money. And it forces some kind of weird scaling things where you have to, you have big bursts of being busy, and then long periods where you're, not only are you less busy, but you also have less income while you're waiting to get started on the next Kickstarter. And I don't know, there's just a stress element to that I wasn't a huge fan of. Whereas with the meta ads, they, you can control your sales. And if you want more sales, you pour more money into ads. If you want less sales, then you just put less money in ads. And there's plenty of businesses that don't have social media presences and they only do the ads. And I don't know, again, this is me in where a bunch of parallel tasks don't do well for my ADHD brain. But if I wanted to start Design the Everything again, I don't know if I would have a social media presence. I think I would just make carabiners. I would put them up on the store. I would run ads. And it would just simplify the business for me and my brain a lot.
Interesting.
that being said, if you don't have money and you're just getting started, don't pay for ads. Just do a social media account and get really good at that first.
Yeah. Social media is something that me and Weston both struggle with. He's better at it than I am, but I almost never grab my phone out and start taking photos or videos of anything. So unless it's like a really cool part, every once in a while I'll be like, oh man, I just want to remember that myself. I don't really share it, but I just want to remember it.
Yeah, at this point with my social media, it is not a selling tool for me whatsoever. I'm done with it being a sales tool. Basically, at this point, this is going to sound a little conceited. It's a public service. It is like I want the community to grow. I want the world to get better at manufacturing. One of the design the everything and now the Audacity Micro mission statements is we move manufacturing forwards by trying things that people won't and by sharing what we do. And I mean that's what the Instagram account's for, and the YouTube channel if I ever make YouTube videos again.
I will say that I'm a lot more tuned into your posts on Instagram or your daily stories about seeing how things are going in your shop than I was when you were doing products. Just because I like seeing all the different variations and problems you're running into, and I turned a 3-flute into a single flute, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky not being able to show the Xometry parts, but I haven't had too much of a hard time working around that so far. So.
Yeah, no, you can't show any like the finished ones or whatnot, but you can show everything leading up to like the raw material, and as long as you're not giving away the part.
Yep.
So, but that's been good. It's been cool to see. I've wanted to see the finished parts. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's kind of annoying, like being like, oh yeah, I got this part, and it's got 30 feet of this little slot that I gotta cut. And it's like, okay, well, now I'm curious. What does it look like?
I'll get some microscope shots of that one so you can just see all the slots without anything else.
But
I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say that. Oh, so I have a theory about a future strategy. I have a concept of a future strategy for Audacity Micro that I want to get your opinions on.
Okay.
So again, this was kind of like me starting to understand my brain better and how to get stuff done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way forward for me is to, like, if I want to maximize my output, basically, that's the goal with this strategy, is I don't see any need for me to have more than 2 machines at any given time. Because I don't know if I can run more than 2 machines efficiently. Honestly, I don't know if I can run more than 1 machine efficiently at this point, at least with the kind of work I'm doing. But I think I do need at least 1 spare spindle. So I'm thinking my goal is stick with 2 machines, have like a nicer machine and then a lesser nice machine, and like just slowly upgrade machine by machine. So like, right now I have the Haas and the Tormach. Eventually the Tormach will be replaced with something nicer, and the new machine will become my nice machine, and the Haas will become my spare machine. And then, I'll replace that machine, or then I'll eventually replace the Haas with something even nicer, and we can just kind of leapfrog. And that way I always have 2 spindles. 1 person on 2 machines can make plenty of money, especially if I start to get to some more automated machines.
I was going to say, if you're going to stick with the micro stuff and you're limiting yourself to 1 or 2 machines and you're trying to do any kind of automation, if you go into a different machine other than the CMs, thinking like a really small brother Speedio, then that opens up some automation possibilities where you can get beyond 1 or 2 machines.
Or I just have 2 machines and like it's okay, and I can have some downtime occasionally. Like,
yeah.
If I have if I get to the point where I even have 2 CMs cranking away simultaneously, and I find myself with free time, like at that point, I think I've hit acceptable levels of income, and it's fine.
Yeah. No, I mean it's all the how far you want to push it and what is your end goal. So I guess let me ask you this then: what is your end goal? How big do you want to grow Do you want to get to the point where you have employees? Are you just trying to get a comfortable income for your family? Like, what is your larger goal for the business? What do you want out of it?
So
Like,
basically my goal with having a business, so like it refines down to being able to do what I want and not do what I don't want. So
okay,
I want to have enough income where I can pay people to do the things that I don't want to do and have a business that lets me do the things that I do want to do. That's
oh,
basically my goal at its simplest form. So
that
what that means is probably, it's enough income where, let's say I don't want to mow the lawn, I can hire a gardening service to come out and mow the lawn. Or, if there's like, if I don't feel like doing, I don't know, house repairs, like it doesn't bother my pocketbook to call someone out. Even though I'm capable of doing a lot of home stuff, like I don't really enjoy that stuff. And so like my goal is to financially have enough money where I can comfortably just call somebody to do the stuff I don't want to do. And I
the
don't think I want employees right now. That's where I'm at. That may change, but right now I don't want
yeah.
employees.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point where we're going to need an employee if we continue to grow at the rate we're growing. But we're not there yet. So, but yeah. No, for us, our goal is to grow into as big of a company as we can. And we're growing, and I guess our philosophy has always been if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something to being said of being content and not chasing after everything. And there's a balancing act there that I am not good at. But to come to your point a little bit closer, I think 1 to 2 machines, if you're not going to get an employee and you're not going to grow the business and you can specialize on Xometry, I think is a fantastic idea, with the exception being, let's hope Xometry never changes to a point where that becomes unsustainable. And that's the reason that we started out on Xometry, and we're trying to pick up more Xometry work. But I like having other customers that are local that I can deal with and have Xometry as the fill-in, not the primary.
Yes, Xometry is definitely not the long-term goal. My goal is to move away
Okay.
from Xometry as soon as possible. Makes it sound a little bit more urgent than it is in my brain. But basically, Xometry is it's my bridge. It's
Yeah.
going to give me money while I start to find local customers, or I don't even want to call them local customers, but offline customers.
Yeah.
I need to find out, like, who needs tiny machines or parts machines.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
having one customer is very much a dangerous game to play.
yes. That being said, Xometry is probably the most stable single customer that exists in the machining world, at least that everyone has access to. There's definitely customers out there that other my local machine shop that has existed for almost 90 years have customers that have been giving them work for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, that's a very stable customer. Xometry hasn't even existed for that long. But it's really hard to build that relationship and know it's going to last for 50 years. Whereas Xometry, it's an online deal. It's kind of what you're going to get into. And as long as you maintain a good status on a partner relationship basis, you might just be a number, but you're a number that's always going to get parts that you can turn in for money. So on that front, it's a very stable income. So
what have you been up to?
Man, we have been trying to figure out how we're going to get in by the end of the year to the new shop. Like everything's moving in that direction. Maybe not at the speed, but I'm not sure what speed it needs to be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of balancing this act between we want to be slow so we can work on the new shop, but we don't want to be dead. And we've gotten a bunch of work. We haven't got as big of an... So another thing is I was expecting an order from my customer that was bigger than the order that we just got done doing. And talking to my customer, we got some parts from them and it was kind of underwhelming. And it sounds like that's going to be the extent of the order that we're getting, which is still a good sized order. But in talking to them, the order we just got doing was kind of an anomaly, where they were restocking in addition to building equipment, and so the volumes were way higher than normal. And the machine that they're building right now is a new design, and so all the parts, while there are some similar ones, they're pretty much all new numbers, so they don't have inventories that they're trying to pull from, or anything like that. So we'll see. I will say that walking through when I dropped off parts last week on Friday, walking through their shop, we are only capturing maybe 1 to 2% of the amount of parts that they actually use. Oh yeah.
Okay.
So like, as a customer, and even talking to the purchasing agent that we deal with, he is worried about overloading it because there's just the two of us. And so we're kind of at the whims of what they are comfortable giving us, even though we've been their number one supplier from multiple sources on the inside of the company. Like, they absolutely love us and they are more than willing to give us more work. But I think because we've told them we're getting a new building and we're getting a new shop and a new piece of equipment, that they're kind of holding back a little bit until we get settled.
Okay.
To kind of see where it goes. At least that's kind of the impression I'm under right now, which is both good because honestly, if we were swamped like we were before, there's no way we'd probably get into the shop by the end of the year. By the end of this year, it'd be very challenging, and I'd have to be relying heavily on outside sources. With the upside to that being is that I would have enough income to justify having other people do it. So
yeah,
so it's kind of a trade-off. It's like, do I want to spend my time in the shop making parts or my time getting the new shop ready? And so that's kind of the juggling act that we're trying to sort ourselves through right now.
Have you actually run the numbers on, like, it costs me $1,000 per day for every day that we're not in the new shop? Hiring somebody would cost, X amount per day and speed it up by Y days.
I haven't done anything like that. The numbers that I've been running are, to get this new equipment, how much do we need to grow the business to basically maintain where we're currently at? And then what do we need to grow to take full advantage of the new equipment? And so basically we need to grow by 50% to offset the cost of the new of the new equipment. And not even 50%. I think it's actually a little less than 50%. But we're planning on doubling, if not better, next year, and that'll more than offset the new equipment.
So that is, if you are, let's just say you're making $1,000 per month now. If you're making $1,500 per month, you'll be able to pay yourself at the same rate with the new machine.
With the new machine, yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that's covering the extra machine payment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just covering the extra machine payment. Okay.
It's not just covering the extra machine payment. What that is that's covering the extra machine payment, and it's covering the materials and the time to run it.
Okay.
So it's basically covering. I didn't look at as just a machine payment. Just to cover the machine payment, we only need to grow I'll run that number real quick. If we were just covering the machine payment.
Wow, we're only 25 minutes in and we're already doing math on a podcast.
Yeah. We'd only need to grow the business by less than 20%.
To just cover the machine payment?
Just to cover the machine payment,
okay.
which is, I mean,
that's easy peasy.
We've far surpassed that with what we've already just done in terms of what's possible. So we would only need to grow by, like I said, 20%, and that would cover the payment. But growing by 50% would allow us to maintain the added burn rate of having a new machine, covering the machine payment, covering equipment and tooling, and the increase in spending that'll come with having that machine. So, if that makes sense, it's basically covering everything associated with running a new machine, in addition to the machine payment.
What, you're saying you have to spend money on things other than the machine itself?
I know, it's so dumb.
I could easily spend $18,000 on tooling and equipment right now. $18,000 being how much I paid for the machine. And yeah, there's so much I need. I did finally buy more collets. Haas was having a sale, and so I bought 5 of all the collets that I use, and that has been really nice. Before I had more tool holders than collets, and I only had like 10 tool holders. So
you'll find with the Jobshop life that you'll have a lot more tool holders and tools. Like before, your world of products of having 18 tools, that was the only 18 tools you ever thought you needed in your entire life. That's gone. we're up to almost 250 tools in our library.
So that brings up one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I desperately need to standardize at least some tooling. Like I need to choose the tools that I am leaving as my dedicated. These are my core tools. That's what I need to. I need to specify some core tools. I need to buy them. I need to have some backups of them and have them loaded into the machine at all times. I was trying to figure out what to do there. I'm thinking about going all metric and having like 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter, and probably 3 and 4 millimeter, both in aluminum specific tools and non-ferrous or ferrous material tools, or hard material tools, I should say.
So on the thing of core tools, what I will say is we have never sat down and determined what core tools are. They have kind of come about organically based on that's the tool I'm reaching for most of the time. So I'm going to make sure that tool has a higher minimum quantity of tools at all times on hand. And so like core tools for us, we have tool 24, we have tool 30 through 33, tool 95, 110. And so like I can tell you which tools are core tool numbers, but when I got them, they were not a core tool. And that depends. And the reason I say that is because it depends on what type of parts you start running on a consistent basis. That'll determine what needs to be your core tool. So I would build out a library of maybe, 2, maybe 3 tools of standard sizes that you feel like are going to be a good fit for your machine and the parts you're going to run. But I wouldn't buy anything more than maybe 3 of any one type until you get a good understanding of the type of job shop work you're accepting on a regular basis to determine, hey, I could get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 millimeter end mills, but really I only need the 1, the 3, and the 5, or the 1, the 3, and the 4, or something, some combination of those. I don't need everything in between. I only need a couple of them. Type deals.
That's fair. The problem I'm running into is like CAM is taking me a long time because I'm basically rebuilding everything from scratch at this point. Like, when I had the Tormach, I was like, okay, I know I always have this tool, and this tool, and the spindle, so I'm going to use those ones. And I had templates for everything worked out, and I just have none of that for the Haas yet.
Yeah.
And so all my CAM is taking me like 3 times longer than it would have on the Tormach.
Yes. So I will say this. Adding a tool and getting it set up and good to go has taken a large amount of time at every single stage of our business. Having the large library now makes it less and less. And there's not a easy button fix that I can think of for that problem. The only thing that I would say that has somewhat helped in that regard, and Weston's better at this than I am, admittedly, because I usually get in a rush and don't do it. But anytime you set up a new tool, especially ones that are multi-material, if you're planning on using them on multiple materials, get all of the different presets set up at the same time. And one thing that we've done is a preset that we've never used or that has been untested. We'll put like a little star icon next to it to let us know that, hey, this is a new preset. We got all of the recommendations from the manufacturer, but just pay attention whenever you run it and make adjustments and then update the tool preset when you're done.
That's a good idea. I should start doing that. We've talked about that before. But yeah, I've been building out presets as I'm going. And there's probably a mix of ones that are tested and ones that aren't tested, and ones that, like, when I copied the tool over from the Tormach library into the Haas library, it still kept that. And
the other thing that we're trying to do more of is Harvey, Haas tooling, helical tools, and a couple of other, maybe Micron as well. They have Fusion 360 libraries with all of the tools, and you can search that number and then copy it into your personal library. And so that saves a lot of time.
And do they come with speeds and feeds?
No. Some of them I think do, but most of them don't. That's the one downside. But they'll come with the tool, they'll come with the shank, they'll come with the flute lengths, they'll come with like everything except for, I think, feeds and speeds.
Okay.
And the tool holder.
Helpful.
So
here's a question. Does Haas Tooling sell the tools that I would use?
I will say, for us, Haas Tooling is the number one place we check first, because they're usually the quickest and the cheapest to get.
Yeah, I have been liking Haas tools more and more lately. I've been very happy with them. The answer is no. They don't do small tools.
Yeah. And I kind of figured their smallest size that they kind of go down to is, I think, around a 16th inch. Yep. And anything smaller than that, and they're just kind of like, nope, that's the specialty side of the market. That's where we don't want to get into. They cover, I think, as a philosophy, as a company, I was talking to a salesman. He says, and they said their philosophy is, we want 80% of the market, and the other 20% that wants to specialize in any one area, go have at it. We just want to cover the broadest strokes that we can as efficiently as possible.
Which they do a really good job at.
Yeah, they do. Haas gets a lot of flack. Their lathes, I believe it a lot more than their mills. That being said, I will say our Haas lathe has been really accurate, to the point where when Weston sees a 5/10 call out on shafts now, he's like, oh, that's not too big. That's not too big a deal.
Just 5/10.
Just 5/10. And I don't know what most people in the lathe machining world considers to be tight or loose tolerances. I do know that we got really busy, and we had our local machine shop look at running some of the lathe parts for us to help us out, because they have like 11 lathes and a whole bunch of people. And we gave them some of the parts, and they're like, these are grinding call outs. Like, this we can't do that. And I'm just like, okay. And then like we went and ran all the parts. So
yeah.
it's like they're a Mazak shop, and they didn't want to run all the parts that we ran on our Haas. So, and I would argue that the Mazaks are a much better machine than the Haas in terms of build quality and how accurately they can hold parts. And we were, there might be a little bit more work on our end to make sure we're hitting them in spec, but we're getting our speeds and feeds figured out to the point where it's becoming more and more accurate. So it's not really a machine so much as learning how to run your parts to be able to hit those measurements.
Yep. I mean, you can hit parts with, tenths call outs on the Tormach if you really want to. It just takes a lot more care and maintenance and attention to detail and yada, yada, yada.
I would say that hitting tenths on the Haas is easier than hitting plus or minus 1,000 on the Tormach.
That sounds right to me.
But it's the hardest thing with the Haas that I would say, at least on the lathe side that we've run into, is that temperature plays a huge factor into how accurate it is. If we're running a really accurate part in high volume, as the machine is warming up, the numbers will change. Once it stabilizes at a temperature, it'll stay on size. But if you walk away from the machine for 10, 15 minutes it'll start to cool down, and then your numbers will be off, and then you'll adjust for it, and then you'll be playing catch up as it warms back up.
Interesting.
And so I know they have some thermal controls built into it. I have not messed with them, and I do not know how to set them up. And I do not know how they are currently set up. But I do know that they have the ability to do that.
I know Saunders was talking about how he I assume he built it into his post to post under the code, but basically it does a parameter check, and it's like, hey, if lathe not warm, then alarm.
Yeah. Well, and I think Pearson Workholding did a video on whenever he was comparing the Doosan to the Haas. And the Haas has the ability, and I've seen it on mine, I just haven't messed with it. It makes a lot more sense for people that are running the same part every single day for this setting. But there's a setting on there that says, hey, when the machine is cold, adjust everything by 3 thou, and then as it warms up, when it gets to max temperature, then adjust it. This is kind of your range based on your temperature. And the problem is we're running so many different parts that I don't know if it follows it exactly. And different materials react differently to different temperatures in the machine. At least I haven't run enough stuff on there to be able to say that would fix the issue. So, and then you'll have random things where we're in a garage that is split with my grandparents. And so whenever it's either extreme hot or extreme cold and they open the garage door, the whole shop temperature changes in like a couple seconds. Yeah. So that can throw it off too.
I haven't noticed big thermal issues on the OM. I think part of it is it's like, okay, I did a part and that was my part run, because that's kind of the work I've been doing recently. So you don't really notice thermals there. But also it's such a small machine. Like if it grows by, 0.001%, like it's not that far.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely an advantage to that. You will definitely need to invest in metrology equipment, though.
Yes, that is definitely where my investment is going first.
So, getting some good metrology equipment will do a lot for you. But yeah, no, it's interesting to see you kind of evolve in this way as a someone who's also following your journey, and check it in daily to kind of see how you're coming. It's cool to see this evolution.
Yep. Sometimes businesses just have to change. It's the way life works.
So, and I'm glad to see you got that Haas, because it's cool. There's so many different machines out there that I want to learn about. And the OM/CM has always been one of those machines. It's like, man, I'd love to see how someone could use one of those, and it's cool to see that. So I will say that as well. There's another one that I really want to see, and I know Saunders briefly mentioned it on one of his podcasts, the UMC 350 that Haas is basically backing down from.
Yeah.
I would love to see some content on it from someone, even though it's a dead end machine. It still intrigues me because Haas sells a lot, and this is where Haas got the idea from, I think, in the first place. But I see a lot of like DT machines with 5-axis trunnions on them. And it's like, that's what that UMC machine, that UMC 350 is. It's a DT with a 5-axis. So I'm surprised that it didn't do as well as it did.
I suspect that like people were interested in it, but the technology, like the design wasn't right and people were having issues with it. That's kind of the impression I got.
The impression I got, I've talked to a couple different Haas guys, and these are salesmen, so take it with a grain of salt. But the number one complaint that Haas has gotten is the amount of tools that it carries.
That makes sense.
And they can't adjust the design because it's built on the DT platform, and it's at maximum capacity of tools. There's not like, they can't put a bigger tool carousel on it because it'll change too many different things. And so my understanding is that they're developing a new machine with a completely different tooling layout to address that issue, to fit more tools in.
Yeah.
So, which I hope Haas gets away from the giant cylinder of tools at some point, because like they have that one like 100 tool carousel. It's just this massive wheel, and it's
Yep.
like that is the most inefficient like space using contraption, in my opinion. Like at that point, like the belt style or some sort of a matrix tool matrix makes so much more sense.
Yeah, I think the belt style is what I would prefer. The Matrix ones are cool, but they just seem overly complicated. Because then
The
you've got like a whole nother, a 3-axis system just to change tools for your, 3
yeah,
or 5-axis mill. Like,
the belt system is probably the most compact and simple solution I've
yeah.
ever seen for tooling. For
Now,
because like in theory, you could just grow your chain to whatever length you
yeah.
want. Like there's no limits, and you can loop it back and forth however much you want. So yeah,
I've never used anything except the umbrella style, so I don't know, but maybe there's downsides to all these. But
oh, I will say something that's kind of funny. So I ran some more parts on the university I teach at part time. I
the mini mill.
ran, I ran some more parts on the mini mill, and I could drill, chamfer, and tap a hole. Granted, it's an umbrella style tool changer, but I could still drill, tap, drill, chamfer, and tap in 1 minute. What would take 3 minutes on the Tormach, just because the Tormach has like a 20-second tool change
If you're lucky.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And ours, and I don't know why, but ours has been taking longer and longer. And I don't know for sure, but I think some water has gotten into the drawbar cylinder on the top, because it's every once in a while it makes a funny squeaking noise.
Interesting. Can you turn up the pressure?
No,
To
it's the alignment's what takes so long right now. Like
like where it's
lining.
seeking to find the
Yeah.
yeah. Mine has done that in the past.
Well, I figured out what was causing it to happen some of the time. The problem with the Tormach when it's doing a tool change is the further away it is from the angle it's trying to seek to, it can build up. It'll send more power to the motor to try to quickly get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem I've had is if it's only off by a couple degrees, it's hardly sending any power to the motor, and because it's so close. And what I found is that I can literally reach in and like grab the tool holder and twist it while it's trying to seek it. It'll push it way out past, and then it'll immediately go to the right spot and go in.
Interesting.
And so it's almost like, because it's like only a couple degrees off, it's like trying to figure out the minimum amount of power it can to get it just correct. And it just struggles.
So it's a PID issue, and their integral factor is off.
Yeah. And I don't know, it might be that I need to change out my belts or clean some stuff up top, but that could be.
So this is what I was going to say. It took me a second to kind of work through my memory of all the things that happened. Yes, it was replacing my belt and cleaning my pulleys that fixed that issue for me.
Okay. That could be my issue as well.
Because I think what happens is you get a buildup of gunk in there. I think mostly like shavings of the belt that get melted to the pulley, and it changes the effective diameter of the pulley. And so then the Tormach's like, hey, I'm going to move 10 degrees. And then it moves 12 degrees. And like its control loop, again, is off because of it's not getting the results it expects.
Could be. But anyways, that's something that I might need to change the belt out and clean the pulleys off to fix. But I've been noticing that like tool changes have been taking a little bit longer than they were before. But the Haas, like I said, it could run it running the same feeds and speeds. It's still 3 times faster on just that one operation of drill, chamfer, tap. And that's on the mini mill, and it's with the umbrella style. So, yeah.
My tool changes feel super fast on the OM, and they could actually be twice as fast. But I have learned that there is I believe, a loose connection on my X-axis servo, and if it runs at 100% rapids, it'll throw an error occasionally. In the previous owners, there's a parameter where you can lock it to 50% rapids, and the previous owners had that, and I suspect I know why now. But I turned that off and I try. But whenever I go to 100% rapids, when it decelerates, it throws me like it may actually say like servo cable loose or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That'd be cool if you could figure out what was that was and fix it. Because that little machine looks like it rips pretty fast. Whenever I was watching you do some like fast light cuts in your videos today.
Yeah, I was doing. It was 30K RPM with a 3 flute at 3 thou feed per tooth, whatever that works out to be.
Yeah, that thing looked like it was ripping pretty fast.
Yep, it actually may feed faster than it rapids. Because like it's only the rapid speed that is turned down, not the overall feed rate.
Yeah, I noticed that. I almost actually sent you a comment asking why's your cutting speed look faster than your rapid.
It might literally be.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I can pull up the Fusion file and check. Yeah, because it would be rapiding at 250 inches per minute, and I may have been cutting at faster than 250 inches per minute.
Yeah. That's hilarious. And the Tormach maxes out at 300 inches a minute, but I don't think you can cut that fast.
No. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone cut above 150 inches a minute on a Tormach. So I will say, in stainless with a 1/4-inch end mill, I have more horsepower than my servo motors can push the tool through the material.
That's not too surprising.
Yeah, my limiting factor is my servo motors will start skipping before my spindle bogs down. Now, if I go to a larger diameter, the problem flips, where my spindle will bog down before my stepper motors do, or my servo motors. So,
yeah, I was finding, I think the limiting factor for me is the drawbar force. Basically, because it's a little tiny ISO 20 taper, I can't take deep depths of cut. And like every time I try to program it like it's a bigger machine, I get bad results. But when I program it with a shallow depth of cut and a really fast feed, it does really well.
Now, does that mean like the adaptive high efficiency milling strategies are a bad fit for that machine? Where it's a low axial, high radial, low axial, high radial, high speed.
So I am using adaptive toolpaths. You're right. I should try a pocketing toolpath because those tend to be faster.
I mean, like if you like go, like 1 times D depth, but only like 5% step over.
No, it doesn't like those.
Oh, really? It doesn't?
Yeah. With my 3/16 tool, I was doing a 50 thou step over and I think a 25 thou depth of cut. But at, 260 inches a minute or whatever.
Yeah. See, I think if you... What size tool was that?
3/16.
Okay. I think I would try like a 5 or 10% tool width, which is going to be less than 50 for that diameter of tooling.
But at a high depth of cut?
A high depth of cut.
I have tried strategies like that, and I have just not gotten anything to work well.
Interesting.
I just don't get good finishes like that. That was the problem I was running into. Oh, we didn't even talk about the stainless part of Doom. I took a Xometry part that I should not have taken. I took it because it had some like little tiny features on it, and I was like, yeah, I can do these really well. And the little tiny features were fine. They came out great, no problems. The issue I ran into is it was like it was over 3/4 of an inch. It was almost 7/8 of an inch tall. And I was just really struggling to remove that material and to get good wall finishes on that 7/8 inch tall. And I think because of what we were talking about, and I was using bad strategies on it. And so the material removal took a lot longer than I was expecting. I also had it in there's a G187 mode that's like the roughing finishing mode, and it changes how it smooths and rounds corners and stuff. Turns out that makes a really big difference on big adaptive toolpaths. And I had it in finishing for the whole time, and it literally took like 2 or 3 times longer than I expected. And I later tried turning on using the roughing mode, and it made a big difference in speed. So anyway, that was one thing that led to it being a lot longer. But I just tried setting after setting after setting, trying to get speeds and feeds right. And I kept trying to go for like a low depth of cut and a high depth of cut and a low radial engagement, because that's kind of what I normally do. Mm-hmm. But I was struggling. And so, I eventually got this part made. I had driven down to Indianapolis like an hour there, an hour back. I picked up a chunk of material. I came back. I started machining it. It was taking way longer than I expected. It was at like, I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I was finishing it up, and I flipped it over for op 2. Op 2 there's another reason I like the part. The second op was just facing and chamfering. Super easy. Turned it over, put it in my vise, hammered it down flat so that it would, be nice and parallel, put on the parallels. Ran the second op, faced it off, checked it. It was like, okay, this actually came out pretty well. It took me all day, but it came out pretty well. It was due the next day. And I flipped it back over and I looked at it. And when I had put it in the vise and put it onto parallels, I damaged it. There was a section that had some really thin walls. And when I hammered it on to make sure that it was flat, just like I would with any other part, I dented those walls pretty severely. And
yep.
So that was disappointing. I was like, well, I guess I'm going back down to Indianapolis tomorrow to get more material. So the material place opened at, I don't remember if it was 7 or 8. So I got up early that morning and I drove down there. I didn't call them ahead of time to give a warning or anything. I was just hoping they had the material there. And I showed up right as they opened and, followed the guy in as he unlocked the door and grabbed the material and drove back up here and then spent the, entire rest of the day remachining that part again.
So listening to this story, one thing that sounds like you need to invest in is high feed tooling.
Yes.
Like that sounds like the perfect kind of tooling for this machine.
Yep. That is definitely on my list. And running the 3/16 inch tool like I was basically is treating it like it was out of here. Treat it was like, sorry, there was a bug and now I'm distracted.
No, you're good.
That 3/16 inch tool has a slight nose radius on it, and so I'm almost running it like a feed mill. Mm-hmm. And I figure if my mill likes that, yeah, it'll definitely like some feed mills. Part of the problem is I use a lot of small tools, and feed mills, you can find them in 1/16, but they're not easy to find. And they don't come smaller than that.
I feel like you can find them. I know you can get them smaller than a 1/16, because there was a video of Grimsmo. He was slotting titanium with his grips, the slot for his the lock bar. Mm-hmm. And I think that one was like a 136 or maybe a 20 thou high feed end mill. He had a whole video on it.
I suppose it's possible. Once you get below 1/8 of an inch, it's almost a moot point because I have no problems running smaller tools with a high efficiency milling type strategy.
True.
For example, I was running some parts out of brass. I was doing a T50 Torx head, which is a pretty big Torx pattern. And I was doing, I think, a 1/4 inch deep with a 1/16 inch end mill. No problem at all. It actually, it cut really well.
But you could probably even run like a 3/8 high feed mill with that machine.
I don't think it would like a 3/8 of any variety.
But I don't know. I feel like you could do a 3/8, and the only reason I say 3/8 is because you could get a really deep depth of cut with a 3/8 and have a really long reach 3/8
high feed pockets. Yeah.
So, Not that you're going to get into any of that, but if that were to ever come up, I bet you could do it. That would probably be about the limit.
Yeah.
Maybe quarter inch. But the high feed end mills, I think all the forces are straight up. And so I don't feel like it would impart very much torque to the machine.
I need to pick some up my next tooling order.
So,
I wonder if I have any of the 1/8 inch ones that I used to use on my carabiners. I may still have some of those around.
Have you watched? I think his name's Nerdily. Nerdily.
I occasionally watch a random one of his videos. Yeah,
because I've seen where he's done some die work, and he'll often use a high feed mill that's extended out like insanely long to do the outside walls of his parts or to do deep pockets. And it looks like, I mean, he's doing it in a BT30 style in some of his videos. And it's like, that is an insanely long reach tool. And he's cutting like a hardened steel with it at like 3 or 4 inches of depth.
Yeah.
So it can't be putting that much torque into the machine.
Yeah, it's on my list to try.
So, anyways, not a problem if you stay with smaller parts. So,
yeah,
if you stay away from stainless parts that look easy but have thin features.
It was easy. It was just big, and then I also ruined it.
Yeah,
so
it'll happen. It's not the first, and it won't be the last.
Yep.
So,
yeah. So the parts I'm about to start working on, there again, it's a rectangle with like some pockets on it, but there's 2 different versions that are almost identical each, and I'm making 2 of each, so a total of 4 parts. Each part has 17.5 feet of slots that are 20 thou wide and 60 thou deep. That'd be my next part.
Oh man!
And this machine will love it. Like I don't see any problem with that whatsoever.
No, there's a lot of small parts on Xometry, so I've seen a lot of parts that show up there that are just teeny tiny.
Yep. Xometry has this tendency to show me large parts, and I find it very annoying because they know what size my mill is, and they're showing me these like 48-inch long parts.
Yeah, that is one setting I wish Xometry had more than anything. Is hey, I will tell you for certain that I will not accept these jobs, so don't even show them to me.
Yeah, I think I've seen this exact same behavior in things like YouTube or even like Instagram or Facebook, where if like its job is to show you things, and like a lot of the times it'll do a good job at showing you the things that you want to see, and then eventually you just like go through all the things that you want to see, and it like is still frantically trying to show you things, and the suggestions just get wilder and wilder. I think Xometry does that.
Yeah, I think it does. It's annoying, but it is what it is.
Yep.
But I mean, from like a Xometry business perspective, I would much rather like to know, hey, I have customers or I have shops that'll take this type of part and they won't take this type of part. So I know what my capacity is right out the gate for that type of part. I know immediately all these shops either will or won't take that part, just as a general rule. And I'm sure they're collecting that data, but it'd be nice if they use that data to actually show customers what they want to see.
I think it feeds the algorithm, like, because you put in what machines you have and what the work envelopes are. Yeah. Maybe I need to take my Tormach off there, because that does give me a larger work envelope that I'll never take work in.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
Yeah. It also thinks I have a lathe, so.
Yeah, well, to be fair, we've run a lot of lathe parts on our Tormach.
Yeah.
So, and I saw a perfect part today for you. It looked like a custom torque screw. That would be it's a lathe part, but it had, the Torx looking feature in the top of the head, and it had some other milling features on the other side.
Was it a screw or like a lug nut? Because It sounds like the one I just did. It was
Oh,
kind of
really?
like a lug nut. Yeah.
No, this one looked like it had the 60 degree or whatever, or 100 and whatever the angle it is to be a flathead screw.
Oh, interesting.
But it was really tiny. I mean, it was like a number 4 screw.
That's
something.
huge.
For me, that's tiny.
The on this part that I just did, it had, or these parts, I should say, one of them had like 9 172 tapped holes and like 4 or 5 256. And when I got to the 256, I was like, oh, this is so much better.
Yeah.
And I'm about to do some M 1.5s on my next part.
Well, I had PTSD doing 160 titanium parts with 2 aught-80 tapped holes.
It sounds like my carabiners.
Yeah. Oh,
I remember you struggling with those.
Yeah, I had PTSD on those. So I guess I should say 440 is larger, but it's still really small from our normal workload.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been smaller than that, but I'm just trying to remember the size.
I do have confirmation that my machine does rigid tap.
Oh,
I wasn't sure how well it was going to work.
Oh,
I knew that it had the parameter turned on or whatever, but like I wasn't sure how well the machine would handle it. But I did break one of the 172 taps, but that was with like a 50% thread engagement hole, which we already know is a problem. And copper is supposedly really hard to tap. So I broke the tap on the first hole, but after that I went to a 60% thread engagement and it was no problem.
Yeah. Copper's really gummy, I think is the main issue with it. And I think, did you use a cutting or a forming?
Those were cut taps.
Yeah, I think copper really likes the forming taps.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Another thing that Xometry does a lot of that I haven't done very much of is helicoil threads.
I've done lots of those. I've done lots of those.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I used to have to repair my fixture all the time.
Oh, man.
Before I made my steel carabiner fixtures. I haven't seen a single job for a helicoil.
I almost all the aluminum that I see, it seems like if they have a tapped hole, it's like a 50-50 shot if it's going to be a helicoil or not.
Huh. They're super, super easy.
Yeah, I know. I've never invested in the taps or helicoils to have on hand to do them.
Yeah, you just get a kit off McMaster. Actually, that's I think they're expensive on McMaster. I think you get them on Amazon. Is the cheaper way.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I had those aluminum fixtures with all the 440 holes in them, I was helicoiling like 2 or 3 holes basically every time I ran the fixture.
Yeah.
Actually, even my steel fixtures now have helicoils in a lot of the holes just because they wear out over time. Yeah.
Gotcha. But yeah. Let's see here. What else? You were looking at getting different tool holding at some point, or work holding, right?
Yes. I still desperately need better work holding than the mod vices. I scrapped some of the copper parts I was working on because of work holding issues.
How do you make your aluminum vise or your aluminum soft jaws with the mod vices? Do you tighten everything down?
So you set it up with a parallel, and then you clamp onto the parallel, and then you machine them.
Okay.
And sometimes you don't machine into the parallel.
Yeah.
Shout out to Cerven Solutions. I bought a couple mod vices from them, and they're like, "Do you want our soft jaws?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take some soft jaws." They sent me dozens of soft jaws, and I'm never ever going to need to buy a soft jaw again. And like probably 3/4 of them were used, but there's like, they have 4 different sides that you can use. So I have so many soft jaws. Thank you, Cerven.
And they got they probably don't need them ever again.
Oh no, they went all laying in 5 axis.
Yeah.
But upgrading work holding is definitely an urgent need. I think metrology is more urgent. Ken from Flux Vices is sending me a Flux Vice, and I think that'll hold me over until I can buy some more metrology stuff. But I need nicer stuff.
Did you happen to see the story that Weston posted on our Instagram on the business account of the stainless steel bolts that we did that had the flats and the cross-tapped hole?
I don't remember. I remember like a rectangular bar that looked really simple until it had a domed head on it, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was fun. So we had this part that we just did this week, and it looked like a really big stainless shoulder bolt with some flats cut into it and then a cross-tapped hole and then like a weird cut in the middle of the head. Kind of
okay.
went out. It was kind of like an oval, or not an oval, like a slot, but the slot goes to the outside of the part, so you only see one end of it.
Interesting.
Anyways, I ran into a problem with that part, and shout out to Protean Machining, Dylan, for helping me out with this, because I was hitting my head against the wall. So I'm going to pull up the part, or actually, if it's still on Instagram, maybe you can pull it up to show everyone.
I still don't have OBS on this computer. I'll get that
Oh,
installed.
you don't?
No, yeah, I can't do screen capture or screen capturing right now.
Oh, man. Okay. Then we'll do this the low-tech version. So that's the part.
Okay.
So you can see this right there. It's got the tapped hole with the slots, or the flats, and then it's got that big kind of cut on the top.
Yep.
Okay. So that was a 4th axis part where we machined the flats and then rotated at 90 and drilled and tapped the hole. Okay.
Okay.
And because it's a 4th axis, I was like, oh, I can chamfer both ends of the tapped hole. Okay. One end of my tapped hole, when I went to chamfer it, the tool went like 30 thou too deep. And on the other end, it didn't chamfer it at all.
Interesting.
Okay. And so I thought my 4th axis was set up wrong, except my parallels came out perfect. Like my 2 flats, they came out on size and centered. So knowing what you know, and I'm putting you at a huge disadvantage here, but knowing what you know and seeing the part, at least briefly, any idea what could have caused it?
My guess is Fusion was putting the chamfer onto some weird plane or like projecting it strangely.
No. Although that's a good guess that I tried to figure out. I will tell you this. That what I did to diagnose the issue and at least figure out what Fusion was doing, although not why it was doing it, I ran a simulation and I clicked on the same point on both ends, and they were at different Z heights.
Interesting. My only other thought was it was off center as located in Fusion for some reason.
For the work coordinate system, it was.
Yeah.
And so what happened is, because it had that weird profile cut on the top face of it, it did not view it as a perfectly cylindrical object, and it did not put the origin in the center of that face.
Oh.
It shifted it over ever so slightly. And Dylan helped me figure that out. But we were both racking our heads against the wall for a little while trying to figure out what was going on. I was going insane trying to figure it out. And I was messing with the tool path. I was messing with all these different offsets and things. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I've had that issue before, but this is the first time I've had that issue on a 4th axis part. And for whatever reason, it just didn't make as much sense because I was rotating the part, and it was the same code, just with a, because all I did was I took the feature and I patterned it to the other side. And so it was the same tool path at different heights. And that's what was just blowing my mind. So yeah, that was fun. Scrapped a part because of it, but I was really glad I got it figured out with Dylan.
Yeah. Yeah, Fusion does weird things sometimes.
So, I mean, it makes sense, but it's one of those weird problems that until you've tried to troubleshoot it on your own. And okay, this is one thing that I will say on a tangent now that I've thought about it. It's one of those problems that if you don't run into, when you do run into it, you'll bash your head against the wall. And when I had problems like this using SolidWorks, I could call SolidWorks or one of their supported vendors in my local area that was Trimec, or that is Trimec, and I can get a technician on the phone in minutes to sit there and troubleshoot it with me and do a screen share and figure out what's going on in SolidWorks. My biggest complaint with Fusion is I have no tech support help that I can find. Like, there's no number that I've figured out that I can call and get help within a short amount of time, especially now that we're paying for it and we've got the machining extension.
So, did you know you can buy Fusion through a reseller that supports it? Like, is it DSI? Is that the one that Rob Lockwood works for, or someone works for? Or no, Phil, Dr. Phil on Instagram. I think he works for DSI. And it's the same price to buy it through them, except also they offer support and things like post modifications and all that stuff.
Okay. I'll need to look into that because I asked Dylan if he had the same issue and he said I think he helps out Fusion some. I don't know. But he struggles getting help. I mean, he knows a lot of the Fusion guys and he can't call up Fusion and get tech support either. So
basically your only option is the forum, which I've had to use a couple times for some of the API stuff. And it's actually, like, as far as forums go, it's active and you get responses pretty quick.
Yeah.
But not in real time, like talking to somebody on the phone.
Yeah, and so that's probably one of my biggest complaints. I absolutely love Fusion. And what's really frustrating is we had a guy that reached out to us on Fusion when we were thinking about getting the machining upgrade, whenever we were going to buy the software. And he was on the ball. He was responsive. He was willing and talked on the phone. And he liked all of our feedback and our input. You know, he asked us a whole bunch of questions. Well, what do you like about Fusion? You know, well, we've been on the startup license. We absolutely love it. You know, we like this. We like this. We don't like this. We don't like this. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's all great feedback. We're always looking for feedback and stuff like this. And it's like, oh, okay, sweet. And then, like, as soon as we buy the software, ghosted.
That's what you call a salesperson.
And it's just like, where'd this line of communication just disappear out of thin air?
Yeah.
You know, I've tried emailing him multiple times, you know, being like, hey, here's, you know, a problem I've run into, or here's this weird anomaly. Here's this, here's that. Can you help me with this? And nothing. So it's just really frustrating because I do really like Fusion. I think it's, at least not having used any of the other major softwares, only comparing this to SolidWorks, it's amazing. For the CAD cam side, or for the cam side. So
you should consider looking at one of the resellers. I think, is it DSI? Is that the right name? Am I just making up letters?
I don't know.
They had like a big conference that you know, all the YouTubers and everybody went to not too long ago.
I will send out, those of you who listen to the podcast and have actually been responding to my questions I ask, like I've had a lot of people reach out to me that listen to our podcast. I greatly appreciate it. And so I'm going to send out another question to the broader listening audience at large. Have any of you bought Fusion through a reseller, and have you had good support by doing it that way? Like, I'd love to hear what resellers are out there and your experience with them, especially since it's the same price. Like, it sounds like a no-brainer, but it'd be interesting to hear.
And is DSI a real company, or did I just make that up? Or just cherry pick a random name from some other company that's not related?
I don't know. It sounds like a question we could Google on the podcast, but I'm afraid to get off topic.
Hey, we're an hour and 15 minutes in. We are in prime territory for math on the podcast, for showing parts with our phone to the camera on the podcast. By the way, people, did you know this is also a video podcast if you're on Spotify? Just FYI.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference if you watch the video or not for us. But
I got a question that a host should never ask. besides Spotify, what are we on?
Basically, all the big ones.
Okay.
Google Podcasts, if that exists, that may have died. We were on Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Overcast, Pocket, pretty much all the big ones. There may be some little tiny niche ones that we are not on. And if that bugs anybody, tell me and I can get us on there. But we should be basically, Amazon Podcast, that's another big one. We're basically everywhere.
Okay, because like I've had a couple people ask me that, and I'm always like Spotify and Apple, but I was like, and I think some others, but those are the only two I can remember.
It used to be that if you went to anchor.fm/taps and patience, it would have a list of all of them. But now that Anchor was bought by Spotify, I don't know. I don't think you can get that same list. So, but if we're not somewhere you guys want to like it, so shoot me a message and I'll get us on there.
Yep. But yeah, I think I'm running low on things to talk about, and I'm entering the dangerous territory. How are you doing over there?
Pretty good. I am considering something.
Okay, let's hear it.
I was thinking about setting us up a Patreon.
Oh, I thought you already had one.
That went with Design the Everything.
Oh, I guess that was a question I never did ask you.
Yep, the Patreon went with Design the Everything. So I was thinking about setting one up for this show, and actually running the podcast is so cheap, I don't really feel the need for money for that. But I was thinking we use the money to do a IMTS meetup.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
To get you there, to get me there, to
yeah, that'd be fun.
I don't know. We probably will have to pay. We'll probably just I can probably call up Pocket NC and be like, hey, can we borrow your booth for an hour?
Which they're a whole nother can of worms of machine tool builders that I want to understand more. I want to see their stinking machine up and running.
So tentative IMTS taps and patience build up. It'll be much smaller than the With Intolerance meetup.
Yeah. No, we'll just piggyback off of it. We'll be like in the booth next to them and be like, yeah, we exist.
Do it at the same time across the hall.
We're like, look at all these people that didn't show up for us.
It's just AJ and Harrison over there. Harrison's like slowly trying to cross the aisle to get to the With Intolerance.
Oh, look, we're double booked. Half our audience is over here at at the With Intolerance podcast.
Yeah, we'll do it at the exact same time in the same place as the With Intolerance meetup. And we're like, wow, we had 400 people show up. We only have 4 listeners, and one of them's my mom, and she's not here. But we had 400 people show up.
Yeah. Then I could finally do one of my favorite things to do in a large group setting. So I guess you all are wondering why I've got you gathered together. As everyone turns to me and goes, who are you? Oh man.
Anyway, I'm thinking about setting up a Patreon. I'll probably cap it at like $3 a month or something. But I don't know. I'll have that set up at some point. And again, it's like we're not making money off the show, and that's fine. Speaking of which, if you make a product or offer a service that makes physical things, shoot me a message and we'll plug you on here for free. You don't even have to sign up for the Patreon. Though if you sign up for the Patreon, I'll say your name on every episode. So there's that.
Which that might not be much of a plug because you're struggling to come up with your own company name right now.
What? I have a company name.
Well, I know, but no, I guess that's true. Never mind. Scratch that. I was thinking of the last episode that we had before this one. Where
I couldn't remember my own. Where I was like, I don't know what to say here.
Yeah.
Audacity
Insert company
Micro.
name.
That's what I'm going with here.
And I'm gonna have to relearn it. I'm gonna fumble it. I know I am. So what's your new name again?
Audacity Micro.
Audacity Micro. It's gonna take a little while to remember that.
I'm keeping my logo on Instagram the same for like a month or two until people are used to it, and then I can change the logo. Plus, I don't have a new logo.
Okay. Where'd you get your first logo?
Scott.
Oh, Scott. Okay.
So either him or my brother will do the next one.
Cool. All right. Well, I think I'm done.
My last thought is I almost named the company Goliath Micro because I thought it was funny.
Goliath Micro.
Yeah. I didn't get very close. Like the almost is a strong word. That was a name that was on my list that I thought was funny.
It's unique. That is for sure.
Goliath Micro or Audacity Micro?
Goliath.
Okay.
It's that time. It's the time where we are going crazy and say goodbye. I think it's worse because of the time change. It feels like it's much later.
It is late. It's 9:40.
Yeah.
It's so late.
Yeah, but that's normally like 10:40.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, we've been rambling for a little while. Hopefully you've taken something from our podcast, learned something, or helped you out somewhere. Please like and tell all your friends about us. We appreciate you guys that do listen to us. I know it seems like I've been getting a lot more responses, and I appreciate it greatly. So this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro.
Uh-huh.
I remembered it. I'm not completely insane yet. So yeah.
Oh, is that it? Okay, bye.